We all have friends, relatives, neighbors, and coworkers who see the world a little bit differently than we do. They have different perspectives, opinions, and beliefs, many of which hold on to those beliefs with the same sincerity and devotion as we hold on to our faith as Christians. Jesus asks us to love our neighbor, to be kind to them, to help them, to respect and embrace them, even when they don't believe what you do. One of the most important ways that we can do this is to understand that their faith is an important part of their life. This enables us to have a respectful conversation with them about their faith and that we can share our faith in Jesus with them. This is why understanding your friend's faith is so important.
All right, well said, Wyatt. I just love that video. You did such a great job with that, Ryan. Great job on the video. Hey, we're in a series, and it is Understanding My Friend's Faith. And I want to start this morning off with a question to you guys. And that question is this. It's summertime. A lot of you, you're going out of town. You're going on trips, jumping on a plane somewhere. Have you ever been on a trip or on a vacation that kind of changed your perspective a little bit? So just to kind of get the ball rolling, if you've ever been to like New York, right, you had to get a cab. Okay, that might like change your perspective on the world just a little bit. You don't necessarily have to do that here. You go there, you have to do it. Interacting with people in New York, going to Ground Zero. If you went to Ground Zero, that might like change your perspective a little bit. Had a friend that's going out of town this summer, and one of the trips he's going to take is to Europe. And he was telling me, hey, I'm going to Europe. I'm like, great, I'm going to San Antonio, maybe see the Alamo or something like that. He said, I'm going to Europe, and I'm going to check out like all these different sites, but I'm not going to go like on a tour bus. I'm going to go and like stay with like families in Europe and really get a taste for the culture. And a trip like that can change your perspective. You can kind of get to know what Europe is like or the different areas that you go to through the families that you stay with. It changes your perspective. We had a group of students. Our youth group went out and they went on a mission trip. They're coming back today. Are they already back? No, they're coming back today. But I guarantee you some of those students, they're going to come back and their perspective is going to be different. It's going to be different towards the people that they serve. It's going to be different towards life in general and maybe how easy that you have it and how much you enjoy your home. But your perspective can change if you take a trip and you interact in the right way. And so I thought about this. There was a video that I watched this week that I want to share with you guys, and it kind of illustrates this. So we're going to take a look at it, see if we can get it going. Get it going.
When you enter a cenote, it's really like going into another world, like leaving the planet behind. This is a feeling of really exploring something new, and I feel very lucky to be able to see that. My name is Julian Bode. I've been freediving and scuba diving for the last 15 years. In many different locations, always trying to find the best diving spot. Those cenotes are caves. All those cenotes are connected to each other. And the water goes and flows from one cenote to another cenote to end up in the sea. The first time you go into a cenote, it's something you don't see anywhere else. It's completely different experience than diving in the ocean. At the beginning, it can be a little bit scary, but really quickly, the beauty of the place will just take over. Some cenotes are very welcoming, sometimes so big and so clear that it really gives you the sensation you go into a church and you don't want to talk too loud to not disturb anyone. And some of the cenotes also have a little bit like an atmosphere more like hell with dead trees in the bottom and sulfur. The Mayans were using the cenotes for a very long time. Basically, the land where we are, that's the place where the living people live. And then underneath the cenotes, into the ground, was the place for the dead. Every cenote have a different personality, but I also think that it really affects your own personality. At some point, you kind of enter into like a meditation state that, for me, is completely priceless.
So I love that video. I just think it's super cool. So I was watching it, and Julian he's diving off of the coast of Mexico. It's off the Yucatan Peninsula. And he's a scuba diver and a free diver, which just means, sometimes he has oxygen when he goes under. Sometimes he holds his breath when he goes under there. That makes me claustrophobic just thinking about it. But I love this idea that he dives and he goes through like these different worlds. The word that you heard over and over again, he said cenote. It is a sinkhole, basically. So it's in bedrock or like hard rock where it just falls out. There's like some sort of implosion or something. And then there's this round circle, and it reveals the earth beneath. It reveals like the water beneath. And so they'll jump into these sinkholes, and each one of these are like interconnected, but they're these worlds that he's swimming through, that he's exploring. And, as I was watching him do this, he said a few things like, each one of these has like its own personality. Some of them are welcoming, and it's like, oh, this is really awesome. Some of them, he used the term like it's like hell, like you're going into, you see these skulls, and it's kind of crazy. But each one of these environments that he's exploring has a personality, he said, and it changes my personality in some way. And so, I was talking about a trip that can change you. I'm talking about like exploring worlds, and in doing so, like somehow that changes you as well. And I think for the last few weeks, we've been exploring different worlds, understanding my friend's faith. We've been investigating things like Buddhism or Islam, Mormonism, all of those things. We're going into these different worlds, and it may be unfamiliar to us, it may be strange to us. But as we do that and we explore these worlds, we come away with a better understanding. We're changed in some way. And I've said this over and over again. This is not about you changing your faith. This is about like strengthening your faith and giving you understanding towards a friend that may hold another belief. But in exploring these worlds, we're hoping that in some way, shape, or form, that you're changed by that. And just, as a primer, what we've been talking about over and over again is this. Mark 12:30 through 31, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all of your strength. The second is this, love your neighbor as yourself. There's no commandment greater than these. We're approaching all of these topics from a standpoint of what really identifies us as Christians is the love that we have for one another and the love that we have for our neighbor. And Scripture is very clear that our neighbor could be anyone. And so as we approach this topic this morning, I'm just going to ask that you keep that in mind, because I think if there's any topic, if there's any belief system that we're going to investigate that we kind of go, I don't know, maybe we don't have to do this, it's with the topic of atheism. And I know there's some pushback on like atheism. Is atheism a faith? Is it a religion? I'll tackle that as we go along. But what I want us to remember is sometimes we get a little sideways with someone who says, I'm an atheist, because we feel like on some level that's an attack to what we believe. And I'm going to ask that you just put that to the side. And that we look at atheism this morning together as a way to understand our neighbor better, to love them. And to also understand that there's a great struggle. Part of this topic and part of all these topics, we've decided that we're going to meet with someone who holds these beliefs. And I did that. I met with some friends who are atheists. And as you do, you realize there is an internal struggle with a lot of people who hold to atheism. There are years of struggle, years of rejection, but years of trying to understand faith and not being able to get there. And so as we head into this, I just want you to maybe keep that in the back of your head. Remember, just have a little bit of compassion towards someone who holds this point of view, and understand that it is indeed a struggle for them. But before we jump into, I want to talk about, back up from all of this and kind of go, hey, there are different worldviews that are out there, some of which we have already discussed, but really that some of these faiths and religions fit into. Really three major world views. And one of those is theism. Theism simply is knowing or believing strongly that there is a God. So if you're a theist, which includes Judaism, Christianity, Islam, if you're a theist, you believe pretty strongly that God exists, or you know that God exists. Another worldview is pantheism. Now, pantheism is just there are many gods, or God is in everything. So far we've talked about, as far as pantheistic religions, we've talked a little bit about Buddhism. Zen Buddhism fits into pantheism. Hinduism, which we did not cover, fits into pantheism, but it's this idea that there are many gods or that God is in everything. And then the third one is this, atheism, which is what we're going to talk about today. It's a rejection of the supernatural. And hopefully we'll hit this topic over and over again, but it's not always an outright rejection or a belief that God does not exist, but perhaps that there is insufficient evidence that he exists. I'm going to put this over here and I'm going to step over here so you realize, again, we're talking about atheism. I'm not telling you what I believe. There are not signups in the lobby after this. I'm telling you what an atheist believes. I just want to get that out there, and we'll hit some ground rules in just a second. But just realize that someone who is an atheist rejects the supernatural, or perhaps realizes there is not, or believes that there's not enough evidence to prove it. We good so far? We're going to keep going. All right. So those are the three major worldviews. Now, there are two other views that I came across that is kind of interesting. They don't necessarily fit neatly into those three. As a matter of fact, they move. It's sort of a fluidity to it. They can move throughout these three. And the first one is this: someone who is agnostic. Now, Gnostic means knowledge. Anytime you put the word a in front of another word, it means a is without. And then Gnostic means knowledge, so it is someone who is without knowledge. So that could be someone who believes that there is a God, but I'm not really sure I can know him, or I'm trying to get to know him and I just haven't gotten there yet. That's someone who is agnostic. The other viewpoint that's not covered in this are the nuns. Not N-U-N-S, right? That would be easily into theism. But the N-O-N-E-S, the nuns, this simply means that you are unaffiliated. You haven't signed up for a team yet, right? Someone who's in the nuns. It comes from like when you're filling out an application and you get to the part where it says religion, right? It says Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, Muslim, and then at the very bottom it says none, basically not affiliated with any religion. Now, I think it's interesting to talk about these because each one of those, agnostic and nuns, can float in between the three categories that I mentioned. You can have someone who's an agnostic atheist. I'm just telling you because I just finished researching all this. You can have someone who's in the nun category that's hanging out with people that are pantheistic in nature, believe that there are many gods. Those two categories can float within those three major world views. And I want to tell you that because really specifically this particular category, the nuns, I want to talk about that just a little bit because it's a really important category, and I'm going to tell you why. Even though it means like unaffiliated, here's how that kind of breaks down within the nuns. There are 12% that are atheists, 17%, this is from a recent poll that was done in 2018, Pew Research Group, 12% of those are atheists, 17% of those are agnostic, 71% of those are nothing in particular. 71% are nothing in particular. You have some that lean this way, some that lean this way, and then 71% that are unaffiliated. And I tell you that because as believers in Christ, I feel like that is an opportunity. If we love the way that we're supposed to love, if we live out the commands of Christ as we're supposed to live it out, there's a group of people who are unaffiliated that could see that and change their mind about the belief in God. And so you have the nuns. That's an opportunity for us. And agnostic and nuns alike, that means that they are seeking something. If you're in the nun category or the agnostic category, it doesn't mean that you're an atheist. It doesn't mean that you don't believe. It just means that you're in the process of seeking God. Is that good? Does that make sense? We're going to keep moving. So let's talk about atheism. If A means without, if theism means a belief in God, atheism simply means without a belief in God or gods, or the lack of a belief in God or gods. And so either you are adamantly opposed to the idea or notion of a God, or you're just unsure that there's enough evidence. I want to make that clear because a lot of times we think atheist and we think someone who opposes us. We think someone who says, you can't know that there is a God. And that category is a lot bigger than that. Sometimes it's people that have just been wounded by the church. Sometimes it's people that just want nothing to do with religion anymore. But atheism is not just rejection, but sometimes it's just a lack of acceptance of that. But it literally means, and this is where it gets difficult, it's without a belief in a God or gods, or the lack of a belief in a God or gods. So you could be an agnostic atheist, not really sure if there's a God, but he is unknowable. You could be a Gnostic atheist. You could know for certain that there is no God. You could be a closet atheist, an unfriendly atheist, a militant atheist. You can even be a secular human atheist, which is who I met with earlier last week. So hopefully we're still okay, and we're going to move forward. I want to hit this because it's really important. Well, let's go back. First of all, is atheism a religion? We're talking about my friend's faith. So is atheism a religion? Is the denial of God or uncertainty of God a religion? The quick answer to that is no. And that's really disappointing because we're in a series called Understanding My Friend's Faith, and you're kind of like, so what are we going to talk about for the rest of the time? Like, if it's not a religion, why are we even discussing it? But I want you to understand something, that the lack of belief in a God or gods, or not having a belief in God or gods, drives their actions. And so in some way, there is a belief system in place. They would call them convictions. We can step back from that and go, okay, if you believe something, then you trust in that thing, and then out of those convictions come your actions, right? And so you could look at that and you could go, in a way, that's faith. In a way, that's trusting in something. Now, here's what I need you to know. If you have a friend who's an atheist, they're not going to talk about it that way. Okay, so out of respect, out of understanding someone who believes those things, just know you can't say, well, it's a belief, it's a faith, and just blow them off. You have to go, okay, so that's your conviction. That's something that you understand. That's something that you've come to prove over time. That's your belief. But us as believers in Christ, you can step outside of that and go, that is trusting in something. That is a faith. That is a belief system. So no, it is not a religion, but it is a system of belief. It's a conviction. So, what do atheists believe? This is really hard. I'm going to tell you, when I started this whole thing, the first thing that I came away with is they don't believe that God exists. That was it. And I'm like, man, I've got to fill 40 minutes worth of material, so I can't just stop with they don't believe in God. But it's actually a lot more complicated than that. But I will say that it was difficult. And so what was really important is that I knew some people that held to these things. I knew some people that were atheists. And so I kind of went through my friend list, and I do have, over the years, I had friends that claimed to be atheists and don't believe in God. And so I could have called one of them. I could have met with one of them. But as I really started thinking about it, I said, how many of those friends that I have really thought about it? You know what I mean? Like they've studied it. Like they have invested in science and all of those things and really believe that on some level it proves that God does not exist. How many friends do I have that have a whole system of belief worked out around that? And I came up with this: none. I have not the category, I had no friends that had really thought through what atheism was or why they believe what they believe. So I was in the same predicament I was when I talked about Buddhism, which I was like, I have zero friends that believe this, and so now what do I do? So I resorted to my good friend, the internet. And so I got on the internet. I shot out some emails. I went to some sites like atheistalliance.org and some other things. And, I was looking for people that I could contact in San Antonio, had some trouble with that. And then I looked on Facebook, and I looked at Facebook groups, and I went on to Messenger. And so I found this one organization that works with the military. And this particular individual was a secular humanist chaplain, an atheist. And so I was like, that's my person. That's who I need to have lunch or breakfast or coffee with. And so I reached out to that person and we went back and forth. And finally she was like, yeah, let's get together. And so we met. And just for the purpose of the conversation, we'll call them Vicky and Jed, mainly because that's their name. And so we got together and we had breakfast, and it was a fantastic conversation. They were extremely polite. They were extremely kind. And this was the rule that I had in the other conversation. It's this: I'm coming to you and I'm just going to listen. And then I'll ask questions about what you believe, but I'm not going to push my belief on you or try to disprove the things that you're telling me. Is that fair? And they were like, sure. So we got together, and I had to resist the temptation several times to jump in and say things, but I just sat and I listened to what they said. They were so appreciative of the fact that I wasn't mean, that I wasn't critical, that I wasn't judgmental. And we had a fantastic conversation. And out of that conversation came a list of things that atheists believe. The first one is this: you can't know for certain that God exists. All right, let me back up because I forgot to go over the ground rules. This is really important. The first thing is this: for the purpose of understanding, that's why we're doing this. I'm not trying to get you to enlist in anything. I'm not saying all roads lead to the same place. Please don't send me an email asking me if that's what I believe. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. We believe that. We hold to that, okay? This is for the purpose of understanding. That's number one. The second one is this: when I tell you what they believe, resist the urge to criticize them. Resist the urge to go, that's stupid, that's dumb. How could anybody believe that? Just as a reminder, we believe that Jesus performed miracles, that he walked on water, that he healed people, that he died on a cross, that he came back from the dead to provide for us a place in heaven with God. Some people may look at that and go, well, that's dumb, that's stupid. How could anybody believe that? I don't want someone to say that to me, so I'm not going to say that about someone else's beliefs as well. Does that make sense? That's the second one. And the third one is this: I need your help. Because if somebody gets up and they go to the bathroom and they come back and they hear things like, there is no God and there is no afterlife, right? You nudge them and you go, he's talking about atheism, right? Okay, this is not me. It's not what we believe, so I need your help, all right? Here are the things that atheists believe. You can't know for certain that God exists. All right, there's a quote that was really good, and it says this: let's spell this out. Atheists have no beliefs in common, no gods of any kind, nothing they worship, no scripture, no shared values, no dogma. They have no clergy, no schools, no sacred buildings. The only thing all atheists share is a lack of belief in gods. That spells it out. My friend said it this way: atheism is a rejection of a claim. All right, and the claim is that you can know for certain that God exists. It's not that God exists. It's that you can know for certain that he doesn't exist, all right? But as far as a structured belief system, what all atheists hold to sort of ends right there. So I'm going to talk about secular humanism a little bit this morning. And this is what they hold to. So the first one is you can't know for certain that God exists. The second one is this: you have one life, and this is it. So if you believe that God does not exist, that means what we have today is all that we have, nothing else. And so atheists really have this, at least the ones that I talk to, secular humanists, have this whole like carpe diem thing going on, right? You ever see Dead Poets Society? And he's like, carpe diem, young men, seize the day, right? It was a horrible Robin Williams impression, but he said, seize the day. That is a big part of secular humanism. They're like, right now is all we have, and so let's live life to its fullest. For my friend Vicky, their group, they do service projects. I mean, they help people who are homeless. They go and they pick up trash. They help the LGBT community. They went out to the Incarnate Word University, a Catholic university, to help them. They looked at them weird because they had orange t-shirts that said secular humanist on it, but they went and they helped, and they did it with a great attitude. This life is all we have, and that's it. So serving is a really big deal for them. This may go without saying, but there is no afterlife. Again, this is what atheists believe, all right? There is no afterlife. So when I asked my friend Vicky, I said, okay, so this may be surprising to you, they organize services for people in the Air Force on Sundays. And so everybody has their own churches that they go to, but up until recently, they didn't have a service for anybody who is an atheist or a secular humanist. And so they create these services for them where they talk about different topics, life circumstances, morality, things like that. And so they have a time of sharing where they can discuss things. But I said, when you're in one of those services and you're explaining what you believe, what do you tell them about the afterlife? And her explanation is very simple. She said, you close your eyes and that's it. Now, you and I, again, may look at that and go, that is really depressing, right? You may go, that's so dark. But for them, they wouldn't say that it's dark. For them, it helps them enjoy the experience of life more. Like, this is one life that we have, and this is it. Morality. Morality is about reciprocity and resilience. Let me explain that just a little bit. Because a lot of times as Christians, once we start talking about, there's no absolutes if you're an atheist. So you don't have a God that says this is right, this is wrong. So then you have no morals. They would say that's not true. They would say morality is about reciprocity and resilience. In other words, reciprocity. If I do something, there's something, it's almost like a karma-esque kind of thing. If I do something, something bad might come back to me. Or if I do something bad, that's going to really stop the growth of humanity as a whole. And so morality is about reciprocity. Would I want somebody to do this to me? Treat other people the way you want to be treated. Does this sound familiar at all to you? That's something that we might be able to agree with. The golden rule is really hard to argue with as a whole, but they said morality is about reciprocity. It's also about resilience. Like, keep going, don't give up. So they really believe we have morals, and morality is kind of centered around reciprocity and resilience and empathy. They define compassion this way. Human compassion and empathy are crucial to improving the human condition. It's about survival of the species. All right, I'm going to keep going. Based on what I just said, here's the next one. Belief is based on what is observable. Okay, I believe these are pretty common among atheists, but definitely secular humanists would say your belief or your morality, it's based on what is observable, on what you can see and what you can prove. Therefore, science is really important. You probably realize this. If you ever get into a discussion with someone who's a secular humanist or an atheist, we'll talk about what? Creation, right? The creation of the world. How does that happen? For them, obviously, it's very different from what we believe. But it's based on what they can observe and what they can prove. We consider the universe, this is from a website, we consider the universe to be a dynamic scene of natural forces that are most effectively understood by scientific inquiry. And so if it cannot be observed or proven, it does not exist. And then the last belief that I think is pretty common among all atheists is this: respect of your fellow human is important. Because this is the only life that you have, and this is it. This is the only shot that you have at it. Respecting others is really important. Again, it's about survival of the species, but at the same time, I told you that my friend, Vicky, she's a secular humanist chaplain with the Air Force, and so they have services, and they have, I'm not kidding you, they have 1,000 people showing up to one of their services. It happens during basic training, and they go through like 9 different topics that they discuss with them. And they talk about morality, they talk about life after death. And in those services, there's teaching that's going on, there's listening that's going on, there's sharing that's going on. And out of those 1,000 people, there is a long list of types of people that are at those meetings. You have Mormons who've been disavowed by their families. You have Scientologists who've been made fun of and mocked and just want somebody to listen to them and have a place where they can voice what they believe. You have the LGBT community whose parents have disowned them because of their life choices. And you have Christians who have come from spiritually abusive households, all at this meeting. 1,000 people. And when I asked my friend Vicky, well, why do you think those people are showing up? She mentioned it's because they can come and they can say whatever they want. And we have one rule, and that one rule is do not mock or disrespect what others believe. so they can say anything. And we can say what we believe, and we can share that. And I think that's a big reason why a lot of people are drawn to secular humanism. So this is a list of what atheists believe. And I want you to know this. I really believe whether you're atheist, you're a none, you're an agnostic, whatever it is you claim to be, whatever category you check, you're someone who needs to be loved and accepted and have a group. My prayer, my hope really is that this is a place for you that you can do those things, that you can voice the things that you believe. You can say whatever it is that you're thinking. But that is what's attractive to that group, okay? And so that's about it. That's the extent of what all atheists believe, because really it starts with a premise, which is a rejection of the supernatural. So I want to talk just a little bit. Let's see. You have it? Oh, there we go. Got that. I want to talk about some common ground that you can have with an atheist, because I know right now you're thinking, they reject God. Like, what can I talk to them about? You know, like it's kind of big. And I would absolutely agree with you. But one of the things that you can talk about is that serving is important. Helping your fellow man is important. It's a big deal. Something else that you can talk about is we should love and respect others. You're right. Like, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I believe that, right? You could talk to an atheist about that. And then the last one, that science is helpful. I think there is an idea out there that Christians reject science and don't believe in science because we believe the creation of the world happened very differently than what they believe. And we've spent a lot of time arguing and debating atheists over science. But I think if you have a friend who is a secular humanist, or you have a friend who's an atheist, I think you could talk about how helpful science is. I don't know, I, for one, am glad that we have penicillin. I, for one, am glad that I can go to my doctor and he knows what to do. He's like, I don't know, just pray, I'm glad we figured some things out. So you could talk about those things with an atheist. Here's some differences. Shocker on this one. The existence of God, right? As Christians, we believe that you can know that God exists. John wrote, "These things have I written unto you so that you may know that you can have eternal life." We believe that God exists and that you can know him and have a personal relationship with him. Divine design. My belief is that you can look at nature, you can look at the human body, you can look at science as a whole and see God's fingerprints all over it, from a tree to a human being, to the earth, from the fact that the earth is far enough from the sun that it gains warmth from it, but not too far so that we freeze to death. The way the universe is positioned, the human body, the way things are created, I see God's fingerprints all over nature. So we're going to have a different idea of that. And then morality is a reflection of God's love. I don't think we believe in morality because it's something that furthers the species or anything like that. I think we look at morality and go, how does Jesus treat someone, and how can I be more like Jesus and love my fellow man because God has asked me to do that? And so the more that I become like Jesus, the more I reflect his love. That's morality. Does all that make sense? Good. Got a few more minutes left. So I want to take you to a passage. It's Acts 17. And in this passage, Paul is going to interact with the world that he's in. Now, if you know anything about Paul, or it's called his missionary journeys, really, he went on 3 epic journeys, 3 adventures. And each one of those, he's sharing the gospel with different people. On the second epic adventure that he went on is the topic that or the passage that we're going to look at this morning for just a little bit. On that second journey, he was on his way to share the gospel in Thessalonica. He gets kicked out of Thessalonica. I mean, I don't know if you've behaved so badly that you've gotten kicked out of the mall or something, but to get kicked out of an entire area, that takes a lot of talent, but Paul had it. And so he shared the gospel. They got really mad at him, and they kicked him out of Thessalonica like he almost died. It was really serious, and so he ran. He got out of there, went to Berea, and then went south, and he finally makes it to Athens. And in Athens, it's not a scheduled stop. That's just where he is. That's where he's recovering from the previous beating that he took and getting kicked out. And so he's there. He's waiting for his friends, Silas and Timothy. I just kind of merged those together. Silas and Timothy. And so he's waiting there. It's not a scheduled stop. And as he's there, he's kind of just looking around. He's checking out the place. It says, while Paul was waiting for them in Athens, he was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols. So Paul's waiting in Athens, and he's waiting for his friends. Athens is a place that is unparalleled at the time. It is the cradle of democracy. Like, if you want to know what democracy looked like, you would go to Athens and go, oh, this is it. It was a hub of like philosophy and art. And so you had people like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle that debated there, that we have writings of. Art and culture was sort of the epicenter of literature and art at the time. There were statues everywhere. I think somewhere it was written, it'd be easier to find a god in Athens than a man. I don't know what that's about, but some lady was really frustrated. And so art and culture was a big deal. And then the city of Athens was so influential that they were able to operate freely, even under Roman rule. And so Paul is going to Athens, and he's checking out the scenery. And instead of just like taking a tour, which he easily could have done, he starts walking around. And it says there that while he was waiting for them in Athens, he was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols. So one of the things that he noticed, again, this is not a scheduled stop. He doesn't have any plans while he's there. He's just walking around. He's like, man, I'm distressed about all these idols. I'm provoked. Like, the idea is that he's jealous for God because God's worship is going to like inanimate objects, right? And he's like, oh man, what's happening here? He's not mad at the Athenians. He's not angry at them. He's angry or jealous for God. And so it says that the city was full of idols. It literally means it was swamped. It was submerged in idols. And so you have tons, like the whole pantheon of gods was there. You had Jupiter, Neptune, Venus, just to name a few. There was a giant statue of Athena that you could see from miles outside of the city. And so it was filled, it was submerged with idols, and this distressed Paul. So he's walking in the streets of Athens. While he's walking there, it says that he interacted and talked to people in the marketplace. Like he's just interacting. He's soaking in the culture a little bit. We'll see in a little bit that he's reading some of their literature. He's looking at their statues. And then it says he reasoned in the synagogue with both Jews, God-fearing Greeks, as well as in the marketplace day by day, right? So he's just soaking in the sights, but he's really interacting with the people there, and he's learning from them about their literature, about their culture, and so on and so forth. And it says they interacted with, there was a group of Epicurean and Stoic philosophers, began to debate with them. That just happens with Paul. He's like, let me pick your brain for a second. And they're like, why are you so smart? And they just went back and forth. A group of Epicurean and Stoic philosophers began to debate with him. Some of them asked, what is this babbler trying to say? By the way, babbler is not really a compliment. I don't know, just even where it's there, it looks kind of rude. But babbler really means like a bird picks up seeds, like it's picking up scraps, right? So it's like, what is this scrap eater doing? And it's also used of people that would beg at the city gates, right? So it's kind of an insult. What's he trying to say? Others remarked, he seems to be advocating foreign gods or strange gods, it says in other places, really gods that are not our gods. They're from the outside. They said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. So the strange thing that they're hearing is that this Jesus guy died on a cross and he came back from the dead. And they're going, well, that's kind of weird. Let's talk about that. Like that's really strange. And the Epicureans were just, in case you're curious, they're really geared towards like seeking pleasure out of life and going that route. And then the Stoics are more like, man, we should focus on the mind and learning. So all of these people in the same place talking to Paul. And then it says this, then they took him and brought him to a meeting of the Areopagus, where they said to him, may we know what this new teaching is that you're presenting? So they hear him talk and they're like, man, this is weird. That's stupid. Can you believe he's saying that? We should get him to talk to everybody. Like, I mean, who thinks that way? I don't know. But the Areopagus is just a place that they would go that was a very public place. It used to be a place where they would judge court cases and things like that, but over time it kind of diminished in its power that way. Then it just became a cultural center for thoughts and philosophies and things that people would preach when they came to town. And so he got invited to the Areopagus. But I want you to notice something before we go any further. Before Paul got to make a big speech, before Paul got to go in front of all these people and tell them exactly what he believes, he spent time learning from the Athenians first. He went into the marketplace. He's talking to people. He reads their literature. He looks at their statues and observes. Right? He's soaking in what they believe. He doesn't first go to the Areopagus and just, here's what I believe, now shut up and believe. And no. Like he spends time researching and looking into it. He says, you're bringing some strange ideas to our ears, and we'd like to know what they all mean. All the Athenians and foreigners who lived there spent their time doing nothing but talking about and listening to latest ideas. They just thought it was gossip and something that they really wanted to listen to. Paul then stood up in the meeting of the Areopagus and said, people of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious. By the way, very religious, that's not like tongue in cheek. He's not being sarcastic. That's not like a zinger at them. Oh, you're so religious. You've got all these statues everywhere. Look at you. No, he's saying, you're seeking God. I can tell. You've got all these statues everywhere. For as I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. So you are ignorant of the very thing that you worship, and this is what I'm going to proclaim to you. So before I go on, there's a couple of things that you need to know. But ignorant really sounds terrible, doesn't it? Like like over here, like ignorant. What that really means is they just didn't know. Okay, it's not like that wasn't an insult. But he said, I found this altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. Those statues were everywhere in Athens. So he picked one, and he said, I found this inscription, to an unknown God. And I love that Paul said, you're not ignorant. Like you've created this work of art. It's to like a God, and you're very religious, but I want you to know something. The God that you don't know, that you claim is unknown, I know him. Like I've seen him face to face. And even that inscription, to an unknown God, like that's their own language that he's using. He said, that God that you don't know, that God that you seek, and you seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, that's language about reaching out in the darkness like you can't see. He's like, it's compassion that's coming out of Paul. It's not anger toward them. It's not ridicule. It's compassion towards the people that don't know God. He's like, you're reaching out for him. You're groping for him in the darkness, and you're saying, to an unknown God. And I'm telling you, Athenians, I know him. I've seen him. I've interacted with him, and I want you to know him. Reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us. For in him we live, move, exist, and have our being. As some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. Couple of things. First of all, for in him we live, move, and exist. That's one of their own poets. And by the way, they're talking about Zeus and not God. He flips it. And we are his offspring, also one of their own poets. Paul spent time getting to know the culture. He used the language that they preferred. And in the process, he shared his relationship. He said, we live, move, and have our being. That's intimate language. I know him. I don't just know him. He lives in and through me. And I live my life for him. Like I don't move without him. The God that you don't know, the God that you're groping for in the darkness, I know. Why do I mention all of this? We're all sort of in Athens, a little bit. There are people all around us that believe different things. And I love the way Paul connects with the people around him. Just a couple of things, and then I'm going to pray and we'll call it a day. One thing that he did is he let his relationship with others drive his conversation. He went and connected with people first. He talked to the people, and then he spoke. Let your compassion for other people drive your conversation with them. Don't start with what you don't believe that they believe. Listen to them. And so the next one is learn before you speak. Learn from your friends that believe differently. Listen to them. And when you listen and when you learn, respect those beliefs. You don't have to agree with it, guys. Agreeing and understanding is not the same thing. You saying, I believe the same thing that you believe, okay, but you understanding it and going, okay, I understand what you're saying. Does that then mean respect their beliefs? Let your compassion drive the conversation. And then lastly, lovingly explain the gospel when you have a moment. And I know that sounds big. That sounds like, what? The gospel? That's like this big thing that I don't even know all the pieces to, right? All I'm really saying is share your story with other people. Share how Christ has impacted your life with the people that you know when the moment is right. Let me pray for us. God, thank you so much for today. Thank you for the example of Paul, who went to Athens. He learned from the culture, God, and then he spoke out of the knowledge that he had. He did it with compassion. He did it with love. God, help us to love our neighbors as ourselves, Lord. If they're atheists, if they're Mormons, if they're Buddhist, Hindu, it doesn't matter, Lord. Help us to love those people. They're our neighbors. As we would want to be respected, God, let us respect them. God, thank you for today. Thank you for your son, Jesus Christ. In his name that we pray. Amen. All right, you are dismissed.